Hello and welcome to this lesson on significant figures and decimal places. This lesson is in two parts, as we'll be looking at significant figures first, and then later on we'll have a separate video talking about decimal places. Now, significant figures and decimal places help us to express numbers with appropriate precision. There are times when we would want to estimate numbers, and so significant figures and decimal places are one of the ways that we are able to express or estimate numbers. We will first look at significant figures as mentioned early on, and then we'll later on take a look at decimal places, how to express numbers to given decimal places. My name is Anoff Akonnor, and I'll be your facilitator for this particular lesson. So as mentioned, this lesson is a lesson for Basic 9, that is JHS 3. And to be able to go through this lesson, you should be able to round off numbers. That is, you should know how to round up and down numbers. And then you should also be able to round off numbers. As well, you should be able to know about the place value of numbers. That is, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. You should be able to know the place value of each of the digits within a given number. This lesson, we are going to focus on significant figures, and so at the end of the lesson, you should know what significant figures are. You should be able to know the rules for identifying significant figures, and you should be able to also express numbers to given significant figures. So these are examples of expressing numbers to a given significant figure. So for instance, 234 can be written approximately as 230. That is, we have written it to two significant figures to mean that we have rounded 234 to two significant figures. The symbol that you see between the two numbers is called approximately. So you say 234 is approximately 230. Down here too, you see that we have 335.3674 being approximately 335.37. This means that we have rounded the number on the left to two decimal places. Also, you can see that the last digit has been rounded off. That is, the 6 has been rounded off. Since the number to the right of 6 is 7, we have to add 1 to the 6 to make it 7. So that is why we have 335.37. Alright, so now let's take a critical look at significant figures. If this is your first time joining us here, kindly subscribe to the channel so that you get notified anytime we post a video. So what are significant figures? Whenever we are given any number at all, and we are to know the significant figures in the number that are given, what are some of the indicators that we have to look at? Significant figures in any number are the digits within the number that carry meaning. They are the digits that gives value to that particular number. In our number system, we have 10 digits. That is from 0, 1, 2, up to 9. These single digits are also what helps us when we are rounding off numbers. So for instance, we can divide these 10 single digits into 5 each. That is, we have two groups, one being 0 to 4 and the other being 5 to 9. So when the last, or the number that we are rounding off, the number to the right of that number is amongst 0 to 4, it means we have to round down. If it is 5 to 9, it means we have to round up. So know that when you are finding, or when you are expressing a given number to some number of significant figures, and you are rounding off the last significant figure, you have to consider these 10 digits. If the number to the right of the last significant figure is part of 0 to 4, you have to round down. And if it is part of 5 to 9, you have to round up. So let's look at some of the indicators of a significant figure within any digits. The first one is all non-zero digits are significant. So for instance, given the number 5,639, since all these numbers are non-zero, we say that they are all significant figures. That means that the number 5,639 has 4 significant figures. Also, any zeros between significant digits are significant. So when we look at the number 50,309, you can see that the zeros are positioned in between two significant figures or two non-zero numbers. So these zeros, even though at their position they have no value, they are still significant because they contribute to the meaning of the number. And lastly, trailing zeros in a number with a decimal point are also significant. So looking at the number 49.100, even though the zeros are at the tail end of the number, because they are coming after a decimal point, we say that they are significant. So take note of these two. When zeros occur in between two significant figures or in between two non-zero digits, those two zeros or those zeros are considered significant. And when zeros occur, or when trailing zeros occur after a decimal point, the trailing zeros, even though they hold no value at that position, they are still considered as significant. Now let's take a look at when zeros or when numbers are considered not significant in any number. So an example is the number 200. We can see that the trailing zeros in 200 are not significant because they are not coming after a decimal point. There is no decimal point in the number 200. So the zeros that are trailing the 2 are considered as not significant. They are not contributing any value to the number 200. The reason is because the 2 there, the value of the 2 there is 200. So it means that zeros at the tail end of the number are not contributing to the value of the number in its entirety. Also, leading zeros in any number are not significant. So when zeros come before the first number or the first significant figure or the first number that holds value, then those zeros can be considered as not significant. So in this number 0.0025, the zeros that are coming before the 2 are not significant. So these are the conditions when zeros are not significant. That is when the zeros are coming in a number, or when we have trailing zeros in a number that has no decimal point, and when we have zeros or leading zeros in a number whose first digit has the zeros to its left. Alright, so let's take a look at an example. Consider the number 30,200. How many significant digits can be found in the number 30,200? So you can see that the first zero, that is the zero that comes after the 3, since it is occurring between the 3 and the 2, that zero is significant. But the zeros to the right of 2, that is the zeros that come after 2, because they are trailing zeros and there is no decimal point, we can see that those two zeros are not significant. And as a result, the number 30,200 has 3 significant figures. So even though there are 3 zeros, only the zero between the numbers 3 and 2 is significant. The other 2 zeros are trailing zeros in the number which has no decimal point. So let's look at this table. You can see that the first number, 1234, all the numbers or all the digits in the number are non-zero, and so it has 4 significant figures. The second number is 1002, and even though there are zeros in there, the zeros are occurring in between 2 significant figures, that is 1 and 2, and hence those 2 zeros are also significant. So the number 1002 has 4 significant figures. Now the number 0.0045, the zeros there are leading zeros, and we have learned that leading zeros are not significant. So the number 0.0045 has 2 significant figures. Then the number 150.00 has 5 significant figures, because the zeros after the decimal point can be considered significant, and the 0 after the 5 is also significant because it is occurring in between 2 significant figures, that is the 5 and the 0 after the decimal point. So the number 150.00, even though the zeros are trailing, it has 5 significant figures. Okay, so how do we express integers to given significant figures? So first of all, whenever any number is given, the first significant figure in that particular number is the number with the highest value. So let's take a look at this example. In the number 2,341, we can see that the number 2 is the one that has the highest value, which is 2,000. Hence, the number 2 becomes the first significant figure within that particular number. Then the next significant figure after 2 is 3, because after 2,000, 300 is the next digit or the next number that has the highest value. So 2 is the first significant figure, then 3 becomes the second significant figure, 4 becomes the third significant figure, and 1, which is the last significant figure. So when we are looking at significant figures, or when we are considering the numbers one at a time, we first look at the number with the highest value. This is the reason why you need to understand place value before knowing how to express numbers to given significant figures. Okay, so in expressing numbers to given significant figures, the first digit to consider is the first significant figure, which we just talked about. That is the number with the highest value. After that, you count the number of significant figures that is required by the question. So if the question required you to express a given number to two significant figures, you first take the first significant figure, which is the number with the highest value, then you go to the second significant figure. Since the question required you to express the number to two significant figures, those are the two that you will take. If the question required you to express the number to three significant figures, then you go to the third significant figure. When you are done picking the number of required significant figures, then you round off the last significant figure. That is, you look to the right of the last significant figure. If the number is part of 0 to 4, you don't add anything to the last significant figure. But if the number is part of 5 to 9, then you round up. So remember, when you have gotten your last significant figure, you look to the right of that number. If it is part of 0 to 4, you don't add anything. You leave the number as this. But if it is part of 5 to 9, then you have to add 1 to the last significant figure. That is what we mean by rounding off. When that is done, then all the numbers to the right of the last significant figure, you replace them with 0. So you get the required number of significant figures starting from the digits with the highest value. Then you round up looking at the digits from 0 to 9. When that is done, then the numbers to the right of the last significant figure, you replace them with 0. We will look at examples so that you know how it is done. So let's look at this example. We have 857,386,321. Firstly, we are to express it to 5 significant figures. So 5 significant figures means that we have to first count from the digits with the highest value, which is the 8. So we count 8, that is 1, 5, 2, 7, 3, 4, then 8, 5. So we have gotten our 5 significant figures. Then we look to the right of the last significant figure. The number there is 6, and 6 is part of the big digits. That is the numbers between 5 and 9. So since 6 is part of the numbers between 5 and 9, we have to add 1 to the last significant figure to make it 9. So it means in rounding or expressing 857,386,321 to 5 significant figures, we are going to get 857,390,000. So you can see that the significant figures here are 5. And it goes in that order. If we are expressing it to 4 significant figures, we have to count the first 4 significant figures, which is 8, 5, 7, and 3. Then we will round the 3. That is, since the 8 is part of the big digits, that is the numbers from 5 to 9, we would have to add 1 to the 3 to make it 4. So that is why we have 857,400,000. When you are rounding it to 3 significant figures, similarly, you have to take the first 3 significant figures, then you look at the number to the right of the last significant figure, and then you round, and then you write zeros to replace the other numbers that you didn't consider. Alright, so take a look critically at the rest, and then try and see if you can solve them on your own. If you want to get more questions to solve, you can visit our website, that is the letslearnproject.com. There are more questions there for you to try and get more understanding on. significant figures and how to express numbers to given number of significant figures. In our next lesson, we'll be taking a look at decimal places, how to express numbers to given decimal places. Thank you very much for watching. See you in another video. Goodbye. 20 minutes.